Went through your neck of the woods the other day.
What was that?
Went through your area.
Did you see a lot of turkeys?
Turkeys, you wanna see turkeys, come on my place.
Across the way, now we're live.
Unbelievable. A lot of does. But, yeah, those and woodpeckers,
But
those pileated woodpeckers.
I feed them.
I know, but they eat a suet a day.
They do. All right, we're live. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is a few minutes after 8 o'clock. I'll call this land and water meeting Monday, March 4th. This meeting and all other meetings of this committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so that the citizenry may be aware of time, place, and agenda of this meeting. Roll call will indicate that Mr. Nygaard is absent. He's on his way back from Florida, but all other members are present. And you had in front of you, or I shouldn't say in front of you, if you got your laptop, you do, but what's your order for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Yeager?
I'll second.
Mr. Wingowski? Any further discussion with the agenda? All the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, our minutes do go back, since we did not meet in the month of February, our minutes go back to January 8th.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the minutes? All the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Public comment. Anybody here to speak on something other than what's on the agenda?
We have a copy of the agenda?
It's on screen.
Thanks.
Okay. Lisa, you drew the short straw.
Okay. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
I guess we should start off by welcoming our new staff person, Alex Larson. Alex started in December, but wasn't able to come to the January meeting, so I asked him to come today. And I also warned him, I was gonna ask him to tell the committee a little bit about himself, so I think he's sort of prepared for that, so if you want to talk about
You
yourself.
can relax, we're just a bunch of people.
I know, it's all good. No, so as Lisa mentioned, my name is Alex Larson. I just started off in December with NRCS, but this is not my first term. I grew up in Stevens Point, went to Pachela Catholic High School, graduated in 2018, and then I went to Carroll University down in Waukesha for the next 4 years, graduated in the spring of 22 with my environmental science degree. Back in 21, I was hired on as a pathways intern for NRCS. I worked out in Devils Lake, North Dakota. The following summer of 22, after I graduated, I went back for another term, served in Mott, North Dakota with the NRCS. And then went back to school. I went back to UW-Madison, got my master's in GIS and cartography, and just graduated in August of 23. And then lo and behold, I end up here 30 minutes back from home. So it's good to be back. Excited to work in a very diverse area. It's pretty awesome being out here, having all of our forestry projects, our wetland projects, our agricultural progress. So it's pretty cool to be back and excited to work with everybody.
Awesome.
So you had a little bit of photography. What were you going to take pictures of?
I big into photography. I take pictures of pretty much everything, but big in,
Wildlife or other things?
yeah, big into wildlife, big into birds all of a sudden. I don't know where the bird obsession came from, but it's been fun kind of going around, taking different pictures of birds, seeing what different species can kind of come through the area. Excited for spring, all the different migrations coming back, so excited for that.
And Lisa's kept you around so long yet, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as I can as long as I can.
Today is March 4th, so today I think is actually officially
Mhm.
3 months
3
done, start of 4th month.
Right.
So,
Welcome aboard.
thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I'll go into the boring stuff now. So we completed our environmental quality incentive program sign up, number one. I think in the last report, we were just talking about how many applications we received, and we did get quite a few this year. It was 51 applications received. So a couple weeks ago, we got our first round of funding. So we got 31 applications funded for a total of around $444,000. So right now, we've been preparing, Alex can vouch for this, we've been preparing contracts for landowners to sign, final conservation plans and meeting with the landowners, because we usually have between a half hour and an hour meeting for each person to go over all their contract documents. So that's what we're in the process of doing right now. As far as how we did in the state, so our state is divided up into 4 areas, and we're up in the northeast area, obviously. And the northeast area led the state in contract approvals. So we received $21 million just in northeast Wisconsin for projects. And that is divided into 492 individual projects with landowners and operators. So the northeast did very well. We do get extra funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, but even without that extra funding, we would have still been above and beyond the other areas in the state. So I don't know what it is, but the Northeast has a lot of interest in doing a lot of conservation work, so that's good. So that's gonna keep us busy for the next few weeks at least.
Yeah.
And I'll skip down to the other program that we're running at the same time as EQIP, and that's the Conservation Stewardship Program. We received 16 applications for that program. And we kind of have to have that program wrapped up almost at the same time we're wrapping up these EQIP contracts. So we're juggling a few balls at once here. But we're gonna hopefully finish up most of the EQIP before we dive into CSP, because it's a completely different program. It's hard to keep your brain trained to both programs at once. So we're gonna try to get CSP worked on after EQIP, but we have to have everything wrapped up for our EQIP contracts and ranking the CSP applications around mid to end of April. So we're gonna be busy. And then as far as practices that we inspected and paid since our last report in January to this committee, we had 2 wetland restoration projects that got finished. 1 nutrient management plan. 1 waste storage and waste transfer that got done at the very last minute in December. And we had a few cover crops that we paid on, that were done in the fall, but they didn't look very good in the fall. So we always give producers an opportunity to, let's let the cover crops grow a little bit more in the winter, and we'll go out and check them again. And some of them looked a lot better than they did in the fall. And now with the weather, the cover crops are growing again. And then we paid on 2 low disturbance manure applications also last fall. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
What do you sense is the mood of the farmers out there?
Well, from what we're seeing, the weather outlook is gonna be above average for the growing season, and I think that the word is out on that. So I think the theme is gonna be adaptability this year. People are gonna have to make decisions on the fly, depending on what the weather is like and what the soil moisture is like, and try to be adaptable. Plans are going to change, I think.
I know I talked to my brother-in-law in Iowa here a week ago, and he wasn't so optimistic with the corn prices. I mean, was his take on it. Does that make sense?
Corn, soybeans, vegetable prices, they're
Has milk rebounded at all?
Really?
No. Any questions for Alex or Lisa?
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay.
think you have anything for 7, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
But FSA, nothing? Gotta figure out if they're in existence. Well, yeah, we had that conference back in January 19th.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a while back. I went along with Brian down there to their Oshkosh Building Center down there in Winnebago County. Quite a bit of time was spent on Winnebago County talking about their mapping that was done in 2023, and then what kind of mighties were those again? Those weeds?
Phragmites?
Phragmites. How many know what phragmites are?
So it's a weed?
Yeah, it's a weed. We didn't have anybody live there talking on it, but we did have a individual
A
that
Zoom speaker, yeah.
Zoom speaker, and I never even, I guess they're in Wapaka County a little bit.
Yeah, it's the real tall stuff you see in a lot of the medians along the divided highways and stuff. There's a fair amount of it on 54 as you go towards Green Bay. But it's,
Does it kind of look like bamboo?
yeah, it's a little bit.
If you drive through Green Bay, you'll see it. It's the big, tall, they're like 10 feet tall stalks with a big poofy seed head at the top.
Like, it looks like Papa's grass?
Kinda like
I
Papa,
thought
yeah.
that's what it was. So it's a noxious weed?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Kind of pretty.
Yeah.
It's really pretty.
they said something about here, I wrote down Roundup product has to be okayed by DNR. So I don't, if evidently, the Roundup is not to be used all the time again.
Well, there's a version of Roundup that's labeled to use in aquatic situations, so
Oh, okay.
it's okay to use in water, which is the one you have to use for fragments.
yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
It was interesting. I mean, I'm thinking, I spelled the word and I wrote it down here, but I still couldn't pronounce it phonetically.
So what do you call it again?
Phragmites.
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 PHRGMITIES.
Phragmites.
It's a new one. But I know Wayne knew what it was.
No.
I guess the other part of that presentation was Winnebago County's the rock wall work they've
Yeah.
done out on the pool lakes and
This was not the year to do it.
no. They do most of that on the ice, you know, with dump trucks full of stone, so.
Yeah.
And they've had a few accidents on good ice, so.
They got 7 miles. 1998, they started, the walls were started, they got 7 miles to date. It did show a couple accidents.
What lake is it on?
Son, Huygen and Butamore, that'd be those.
Oh.
Where the river comes in there, they've got all those rock walls now that are somewhat protecting and rehabilitating the wetlands behind them. They were losing ground to wave action and a number of other things, but
Are they still doing that actively?
they are actively still doing it, yeah, when winter allows, so.
It's kind of like Calumet did. Put the rock and then some natural old roots.
Yeah, along the shoreline. Last I talked to Chad, I think he's got an active grant that's over $1 million to
Not
do that.
Calumet, unknown soul.
Oh, Green Lake.
Green Lake.
Yeah, Green Lake down there. Yeah, here they went out quite a bit, and it really showed the difference what that wall made. For the clarity of water and everything else. It's, you wouldn't think it would be that. But that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, when they build them, they have to maintain navigability behind them yet, because it's part of the lake. When you look at an air photo of the water quality on the backside of the wall versus the lake side, it's night and day difference.
Okay, I guess we'll go on with meeting reports.
Okay, the day after Valentine's, so the 15th of February, we had our third Upper Fox Wolf Demo Farms Farmer Roundtable. First one 2 years ago was at the Finn in Winneconne. Last year it was on the south side of Oshkosh. This year it was in Berlin. They've tried to move it around just because the Upper Fox Wolf is such a large watershed and our demo farmers are, anywhere from Shawano to Portage to Fond du Lac and Green Lake. It's a pretty big area to try to catch people, so they've been moving it around. I think Winneconne was maybe our best showing, but the Fin and Feather wasn't very conducive to having breakout sessions after the first parts of the meeting, so. They had a keynote speaker. I missed the first couple hours. I was sicker than heck that day, but made it there after lunch. But they had some sessions in the morning, keynote speaker. Afternoon was mostly roundtable sessions on various topics in the demo farm, planting green, the cover crop stuff. Most of the folks that come to this are kind of on the cutting edge of that stuff, trying different things with the cover crops, that type of work. So it's put on by Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance and the demo farms together. And then they do a separate one for the Lower Fox demo farms. I think that was the following day, somewhere up in the Green Bay area. I know that one's been attended very well. We had 14 tables, probably about a half dozen people, so I'm gonna guess the attendance was somewhere in the mid-80s for this one.
That's good.
Which is good considering you're moving around the watershed in different places. I guess I didn't expect Berlin to draw that big a crowd, but it was better than I thought, so. And then 2 weeks ago on a Monday, we had our semi-normal Wisconsin Land and Water legislative and administrative meeting. And, mostly we're discussing active bills. Usually the lobbyist chimes in for a while that they hire. I guess the bigger ones, and I think we maybe mentioned this because it passed already a couple months ago, but the increases to the farmland preservation tax credits was one that our organization had worked on quite a bit, and that's in place. Matter of fact, I think it was signed in time in 2023. I believe you're going to be able to get that credit for 2023 already, even though it was signed late in the year. Had a couple other bills that we didn't really expect anything to happen on before the end of the session. I know there was quite a bit of discussion about one on comprehensive planning that looks like it may have passed now and is waiting for the governor, but to give the towns a different route out of county zoning and comprehensive planning. Really doesn't affect our association a whole lot, but so it was a kind of a short discussion. And that was probably pretty much it for ledge admin at Wisconsin Land and Water. And then last week, was it the 28th, Thursday, right? Town of Lynn public hearing for the Brooks Digester. That town voted 2-0 to not support that. Brooks had also had, or Vanguard had a informational meeting the week before. Probably about 50, 60 people there. So I don't know. I was just zooming the town board meeting, but there's quite a few people in the audience. You couldn't see it on camera very well, but
I don't know, I figured there must have been about 400 or 500 in the audience,
Yeah.
and there was 90 on Zoom.
yeah. So pretty well attended meeting there. And then the meeting Dwayne spoke about, of course, was it for us. So.
Yeah, I know two farmers came to me yesterday after church and asked if I knew anything about the digesters down there. They said, what in the world? Why are they against something like that? It's like, we won't even talk about it right now. We're in church.
Yeah. Bad time.
But, knowledge is a powerful thing, and change is another powerful thing too. think Jane is here.
Yeah. Let's try that again. All right, so item number 9 is the resolution for Jane Hosh's conservation easement. I believe this is actually Jane Hosh Revocable Trust would be the legal entity. So I'm just gonna share the legal document to start with here. So this was first of all, I guess let's back up just a minute about this program because it's been dormant for almost 12 years since we've had the last time the county accepted an easement. And suddenly in the past year, we have quite a bit of activity. We've discussed the Art Richardson easement that's working its way through NRCS. We've been working with that with American Farmland Trust. We'll end up being a co-holder of that. And then very recently, I've had interest from another couple in the town of Caledonia. Really, they were waiting to see this easement here, Jane's, as it came through the Corp Council. So this is the first time we've done this since Diane has been Corp Council. So she took a read of this and really didn't have any substantive changes, just a little bit of grammar and a couple wording changes on it. And she added on the very last page, it used to be county board chair signature. We've also added Christie signature block for county clerk. So those are the main changes Diane made. I sent this out last week with the agenda. I don't know if you took the time to read it. I don't know that we want to necessarily read any of this other than to say that it's is our standard format that was built in 2009. At the time, Andy Phillips was working for Counties Association as a lawyer. Him and Mike Colas put this together when Mike was working here for Extension. So this is the same model easement we've used for all of the, I don't know, we hold about 12 county easements now, not counting the base ones. So it's basically the same model we've used each time. If you note on the front page, we are just slightly under our minimum of 35 acres. I think this committee had passed a exception to that, I believe maybe at the December meeting, November, December meeting last year. To allow that as our ordinance allows the committee to make that change. If there's no questions about this, I'm just gonna stop sharing this and maybe for a, where'd the map go? I'll just bring a map up here. This is exhibit B of the document that staff has made outlining the property, the 33.67 acres. And I think we had looked at this back when we made the acreage exception, just to familiarize yourself with the parcel, far southern part of Dayton Township. So I believe this is East Road right here.
Those lots there are lots all built around it already.
Um,
Established or?
Yeah, those are, well, on the opposite side, East Road, those are different parcels. I don't recall off the top of my head what they are. The stuff on the north side here also belongs to Jane. So she had subdivided this and created somewhat of a conservation type of subdivision. I believe her house is here and one other, Jane?
There are 3 houses.
3 houses now total that share this private road, Lamb's Quarter Lane. And then the property that we're taking the easement on has basically been a pasture for sheep and beef over the recent years. So it's primarily farmland, a little bit of wooded on it. I am going to So when we accept these, we are doing so by resolution. So thankfully Diane was working over the weekend a little bit and just made her edits to the resolution, which Christie and I had dug up from 2011. So I think I had sent out a copy of that as well. Really not much for changes that Diane made, other than a couple of commas and some ands here and there. But this is the resolution we would pass today. This will need to go on to LGS, Legislative and Judicial next week, and then on to County Board to accept the easement. So
Yeah, it's resolution number 40.
you've got the clean copy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll sign. I didn't have any issues we've talked about before. It's something that's appreciative, I guess, to honor your legacy from to perpetuity.
Well, thank you. Glad I can make this.
Yeah, so our role going forward in these easements is to do the monitoring. You know, we hold about 4,000 acres of easements right now. 3,300 of those were the PACE easements from the DATCAP days. The other 700 are in our county program like this one. So we do monitoring of these, partly to facilitate the possible federal tax benefits of donating an easement like this. So
So Lisa, if solar takes over everything, you still got a few acres you can work.
That's good, thank you.
I thought about solar. Oh, no.
Does this program exist in every county or just, no?
no, very few. Couple counties have ordinances, and a couple of, if you get down around Dane County, a lot of the townships have them. There's a couple townships in Dane that have really robust programs that are actually funded somewhat by the townships. The other county program that's pretty active would be Rock County, Janesville. They had a number of years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, they sold their county farm, so our equivalent of Lakeview Manor. They had a fairly large property with a lot of ag land. They had sold that for, I think it went into development. It must have been near town. The county made a pretty good profit on that, and they took and turned that money back into their easement program to fund the county easements. So I know they do some of that with county funding. And I think they're fairly active in the ALE ASAP program too, so.
So we'll need a motion to approve resolution 40.
Already makes that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Yeager seconded. Any other discussion? And Brian pretty much outlined the procedure to end up eventually in a couple of weeks here at the county board. Any further discussion before I call the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you. I'll sign the sheet here and then we'll send it around.
Okay. All right, so the other thing I wanted to do this meeting was just kind of do our year-end review of the grant programs, partly because this January, February time of the year, I spend almost all of my extra time here in the office finalizing the grants, doing the reimbursement requests, work quite a bit with Tara Mitten down in finance on getting this stuff booked. we do try to get all the reimbursement requests done by about mid-February. That doesn't mean we get paid right away. DNR has been relatively good about payment the past couple of years. I know there was a time about 5-6 years ago where they were really behind on trim grants, and we were getting payments in like July and August after a January reimbursement, which was getting a couple of the counties worked up a little bit. So I thought I'd just recap some of this. I've got a lot of the DNR stuff on this spreadsheet. I guess I'll start with the DATCAP grants, which are not up here. So our DATCAP grant is our annual grant. This year it had a staffing component of $165,542. That's pretty typical. It went up a couple of years ago after some legislative work to raise that grant by about 30 or 40,000. Then DATCAP gives us bonding and a segregated fee commitment. The bonding is for what we refer to as hard practice BMPs, anything from your manure pits to your waterways and sediment basins, roof gutters, diversions, things like that. For 2023, we spent $62,844 on that, which was, I think, all but about $650 that we were allocated. Normally, we carry those extra allocations over. For $650, we didn't carry anything over this year. And then the segregated fee part of that is what we use for our soft practices. Originally, that was mostly meant for nutrient management. In the last few years, DATCAP allows us to spend 50% of that allocation on cover cropping now. The rate for 2023 is fairly low. It's $25 an acre. ATCP 51 is about to get passed here. That'll increase that rate for this year, hopefully. But we had $64,531 that we spent this year out of an $85,000 allocation. So that means the other almost $21,000 gets carried over into next year. That's very typical for the nutrient management portion of the grant because people that we sign up for nutrient management, once you get into cropping season, they don't really have the ability to do the soil testing until the crops come off. And then once you do that, you're into the next calendar year before the plan gets written. So we carry over a lot of that money each year. And then the last fund from DATCAP, we've had that harvestable buffer pilot project now for 4 years. 2023 was the last year of that. We won't be getting that funding anymore. But we had 45,000 of it this year, and we had 16,000 of it carried over from last year. And we did allocate and implement $61,000 worth of buffers in that program this year, which was probably our best year since the first year we had it. So just to recap the 4 years of that, we had 50,000, 30,000, 25,000, and 45,000. So that's 150,000 they've given us over 4 years for the harvestable buffer pilot project. Harvestable buffers are now in that ATCP 51 document. That's their administrative rule that regulates all of our cost sharing from DATCAP. So we'll be able to continue doing that with their money, but we'll do it through regular cost sharing with our regular allocation, like we do for any other practice now that it's been codified in their administrative rule. So then switching up to the document on screen, I just started with a couple of the smaller things, the wildlife damage. That's an annual grant from DNR. It used to be a little bit bigger because the venison donation program is part of that. And as I think you've heard me say a couple of years ago, this is probably our 3rd year now where we don't get any participants. So none of the meat cutters in the county are willing to participate in the donation program anymore, which is a little bit of a unfortunate circumstance because there were probably 4 to 6 food pantries around the county that took that ground up venison burger and used it in their pantries for people. And they're pretty disappointed that that no longer exists. So we used to see more of a $12,000 to $14,000 expenditure here, but because we're not paying those meat processors anymore, that's went down a little bit. So here we basically had a almost $2,600 landowner cost share as part of that program, and about $7,300 of staffing. So this program is mostly Greg's time on doing animal damage assessments. And when the assessments are complete, if they're valid for shooting permits, that stuff gets sent on to the DNR biologist, and they take over at that point, issue the shooting permits for deer, for geese, turkeys as possible. If it's bears, they get trapped. If it's sandhills, it goes to a federal permit. You can get a federal permit to shoot sandhills if they're causing damage. So that's just kind of a typical year in the damage program. Next, we have our Healthy Lakes program, which is a DNR program that's oriented towards riparian landowners. And we've had quite a bit more interest in that the last few years. The first few years it came out, it was $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, because that's the maximum a landowner can get per practice is $1,000. And most of these get implemented by the landowners themselves. A lot of this is happening on the chain of lakes. This year we had a little under $8,500 of expenditure there, and we've probably got another 6,000 or 7,000 of that carried over into next year on the current grant. And we're probably will be working on another grant this year. Since Taylor's been with us, she's taken a little more liking to this program, which is part of why the expenditures went up. Been able to work with a few more people on that. So then moving down the list here, we've got our NRCS demo farm contribution agreement. In 2024, we'd spent just under 120,000 on that program total. A little over 21,000 is landowner cost share. Cost share is not really the point of this program. This is the demonstration network's main goal is to do outreach for new ideas, cover cropping, no-till, farming green, that type of stuff. There's always a little bit of operating expense. We run a website. We fund the operating costs for the UW extension agent that's assigned to the program. And then the contracted services is our hiring or our payment to Matt Bruger from Tilth Agronomy. He's the agronomist that works with Derek Rasper from NRCS. Those are the two main guys working with the farmers that are in the program. So looking down to the edge, this is the September 30th was the end of the first 5-year agreement. That was an agreement that was worth a little over $613,000, of which NRCS pays 75% of that back to the 8 participating counties. And we're the fiscal administrator for all 8 counties. There is about 80,000 left on that grant, and we have a 1-year agreement for 2024 to carry that over and keep spending it. We also have a new agreement in place for the next 5 years of the demo farms that's currently got $528,185 of funding in it, which we haven't had to touch yet as we spend up the 80,000 left over. I will say that I think very shortly, maybe as soon as our next month's meeting, we're going to see an amendment to the new grant. NRCS has agreed to do an innovative conservation practice for one of the new demo farms. So part of this new agreement, we add on 7 new farms. And the new farm in Shawano County is going to be getting a Rain 360 system, which is the robotic irrigation. And NRCS is going to put $100,000 towards that, and they're doing it through the demo farm agreements. We're going to see that addition to our budget come, and it'll probably, I haven't talked to Heidi about it yet, but I'm guessing that'll trigger a budget amendment to finance and county board for the year.
You know whose property it might be?
I do, but I'm at,
'Cause it would be the new farm.
yeah,
Eastern, western?
West Central.
They picked up there.
So it's a farm we'd all recognize.
A big farm?
Yeah,
Wagner's?
bigger. no.
Wagner's?
Cause Talcons are out, right?
Well, Talcons are still
They're still in.
Uh-huh.
in, they were the original one.
Yeah. Oh,
My memory is gonna fail me for the moment, so.
Okay.
Moving on to our host of non-point grants here. So I'll just crank this up a little bit. This is kind of the bread and butter of everything we've been doing the last number of years. Keep in mind, a lot of these grants are predicated on the 3 9 key element watershed plans that we have in Bear Lake, Wyawega Lake and Shaw Creek. We are working on a 4th plan right now for Bear Creek on the east side of the county with Outagamie County. And I've also been getting quite a bit of interest from the Pigeon Lake District in Clintonville. They just got their draft lake management plan, and one of the recommendations in there is that they do a 9 key element plan for the watershed. So I've talked to Tammy Strayherd about that a little bit and been in contact with another member of the district up there. We'll see where that goes. But anyway, for 2023, we had our Bear Lake Trim Grant. This was the final year of this 4-year grant. We had 281,000 of expenditures. Of that, almost all of it was landowner cost share at 268,000. The breakdown on that is 53,000 of it was for cropping practices, mostly cover cropping, and 215,000 was hard practice, partly because we had one large manure storage and several basin complexes up on Rod Hass's farm there in Manawa that we worked on this year. This grant unfortunately only had 88,000 of staffing money in it. This was before DNR reformed the large scale trim grant program and made more staffing money available, but we took the last $13,195 that we could. The original grant was $973,000 that we got 4 years ago. We had $1,100 of underspending, and that's only because they categorized the money into 3 categories, and we could have spent this in the other 2 categories, just not the one it was in. And for $1,100, they weren't going to do a grant amendment at this time of the year anymore. So that grant ends then this year, but the GLRI Bear Lake down here that we'll talk about in a second picks up where that left off. So I'm going to move back up to the second large scale trim grant. Wyawega Lake, 2023 was its 3rd year. This grant has been a little more disappointing for us. We've got quite a bit of underspending going on here, partly because we're not allowed to cost share with CAFOs on these grant programs. And there's a lot of Quantum Dairy land in this watershed, even more now that they've bought the Bartle Farm. So we lost a big farm that was participating in this grant. And then Brooks Farms has a little bit of land in this watershed, not much. But again, that's CAFO land now that we can't cost share on. So for 2024, we spent $37,500. 27.5 of that was landowner cost share. All of that is for cropping practices. We had no hard bonding practices this year in that watershed. We were able to recover a little over 10,000 in staffing. So again, that was a $600,000 grant that ended its 3rd year. So we get 4 years out of these. Unfortunately, we've got $466,000 left for this year. Now we do have a last minute possibility for a manure storage in this watershed, which could suck up a bunch of that money. If it doesn't, we're gonna wind up giving, probably 400,000 of this back to the state. And we'll have to make that decision probably by May or so. They'd like to have the money back so they can give it to somebody that'll use it.
The farm in Shawano is Strasburg.
Yeah,
Oh.
Strasburg.
Up
Thank you.
toward Boulder there, okay.
Yes. Our third large scale trim that's on the books right now is the Shaw Creek grant. We had almost 106,000 in spending there this year. 75,000 of that was a little over 75 was cost share to the landowners. That was split just about down the middle between cropping practices at 37,000 and structural practices at 38,000. So this Shaw Creek includes part of the Little Wolf River between or up around Simcoe, East River, West River Road, those areas. Staff has been doing a lot of basin work up there the last couple of years. That's where we're seeing the hard practice stuff come in. We actually are still doing that. Dan was building a basin last week now. We were digging tile in and doing earthwork. First time ever in February in my career. But I guess that's a good thing. We like generally the farmers like to get that stuff in before cropping or after cropping. And if it's a project that needs the dike to be seeded, the fall never works very well for that. But we do recover staffing money out of this grant. We've got almost 28,000 back for our time spent in that, which has been typical of this watershed each year. That's a $600,000 grant. We've got 434,000 left in it. But we have 2 years yet to spend, 2024 and 2025. And we do have 2 large ag waste projects that are possibilities in that watershed. Either one of them will wipe out most of that funding if they happen. So, and we kind of expect at least one of them to go. So, we still do DNR small scale trim grants. These are for individual farms. The one that was on the books that finished this year was the Mark Moon project up in the town of Harrison for a feed leachate control system. That was $160,715. We don't get staffing money out of those anymore. We used to, but since we went to our cost sharing fee structure, we now charge a fee on that particular grant, which is about equal to what we used to get out of it for staffing money, but the fee is a lot less paperwork on my part, so. So then GLRI Bear Lake is really taking over now for the trim grant up on the top here. This was given to us for year 3 through year 7 implementation of the 9 key element watershed plan. Our 2023 expenses, I guess I've got 24 up here because it's January, but last year's expenses were just a little under 83,000. 58,000 of that was cost share. All of that was for cropping practices. This particular grant is mostly all cropping practices, and they will let us do structural practices if they're not ag waste. So the future basins, sediment basins, waterways, things like that will be able to come out of this grant. We did recover 22,500 roughly in staffing on that grant. This was just almost a $410,000 grant. This was our first year. We have 2 years left of this. And when you look at the spending that happened up on the Bear Lake trim, that's the type of spending we'll expect here next year. So I would, this 327, in my estimate, will go fairly easily in the next 2 years. And then we had a 319 grant through DNR for Bear Creek. This is leftover money for them, sort of why they want to know how much leftover we're going to have in Weyauwega, because this money came from somebody else's trim grant. They awarded us 50,000 and Outagamie 50,000 to spend on soft practices in the Bear Creek watershed, despite the fact that we don't have a finished 9 key plan there. We spent 30,669 of that on cropping this year. There's no staffing available. So just to summarize the non-point grants here, We spent almost 700,000 on that bundle of grants. 73,000 of that came back for staffing costs. And we do have a fair amount of those grants left in the next couple of years. We also have been in contact with DNR about our next GLRI grant. So they are already working on a GLRI grant that will include Shaw Creek and Bear Creek in the same grant. And they'll time it so that it'll kick in 2025 as the Shaw Creek Trim Grant finishes up. We will probably be able to start expenditure of what'll look a lot like this GLRI grant. It'll probably be a $400,000 to $500,000 grant for about 3 years of work in those two watersheds. So that's where we're at. I think all of the reimbursements I need to do were in here by the end of February. Tara and I are still working on finalizing the budget. I know Heidi likes to get a final copy in March here for last year's budget, with all of these things booked in it, so that she can report that to finance. But our annual budgets look very lopsided. We have a $1.7 to $1.8 million budget this year, last year, and almost all of the expenses because of these grant programs occur in the last quarter of the calendar year. So when you look at our budget to actuals throughout the year, it looks like we're not doing anything until about September, and then they explode. So
You gonna just page way back up to the wildlife damage? I'm not sure. I'm just gonna say what I hear from people, that some are saying that some farmers are getting for shooting deer a little too easy. There's a lot of animosity out there. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, there is, this program creates animosity. Greg sees it all the time out in the field, so there's two components to wildlife damage when it comes to like deer damage tags. They have a program called Act 82 where Greg goes out, identifies the damage. If it's more than $1,000 of damage to a field, he sends that on to the DNR biologist, and the biologist can issue that farm shooting tags. There are no strings attached to those tags. The land does not have to be open to public. And the reason for that is because the farmer is not getting a payment for the egg damage. The second part of that damage program is if the farmer wants to apply for a damage reimbursement for the crop damage. And if he does that, then the shooting tags that he's assigned, he has to open the land to the public at 2 hunters per 40 acres of huntable land. And then they have to start keeping log books and track all of that, so that they're not refusing hunters if there's nobody else hunting there. We don't see that happen a lot. I mean, those damage claims have to come to this committee. So, do we maybe see one of those a year? If that lately. We do see a lot of Act 82. I mean, throughout the course of the year, I would guess that we have 6 to 10 farms in the county that have shooting tags through Act 82. And they create unhappiness because if the landowner next door owns his land to hunt deer, which a lot of people in Waupaca do, they get pretty uptight about the guy next door shooting deer all throughout the off season. And we've got a couple instances. One of them's up on Highway 21 there, where the guy has been getting tags for a number of years, and the guy next door to him is just livid about it, always complaining. The guys are actually related to each other, which I guess comes as no surprise, but so those things happen. We try not to get involved in that. We're just there to facilitate the claim and do the damage assessment. That's our role in it, so.
Question, if a farmer sells his cattle to a CAFO, but he keeps the land for himself to work himself and sell their crops, can he still get grants or not? Do you have to have the actual?
Yeah, if he's still the landowner and the operator, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he can sell the commodity to the CAFO, that's
Yeah,
fine
that's
too.
okay, okay.
What can't happen is the AFO can't be the one renting his land and operating it in full.
Right,
That would be ineligible.
okay.
The one last comment on the damage program, that was one of the bills that comes up in our legislative and administrative meetings, both the last 2 years. There is a bill currently, there was a bill last year that died that would transfer the entire damage program back to DNR. And they would, farm that out to USDA APHIS, to do the role that we do now, the damage claim processing. Frankly, I would love it if that passed, but there's resistance from a lot of our sister counties because some of them depend on the staffing amount to keep one of their positions afloat. Some of the northern counties and a few counties around us have a much higher staffing portion of this program. I'm not sure why, you know, we have as many deer as anybody in Wapaka County. The farmers tolerate damage relatively well as a whole. I mean, most of the farms are all hunting families and they don't really want to be involved in this program unless the damage becomes absolutely unbearable. So I think we probably see a lower participation rate despite the fact that we are kind of the mecca of deer here in the county, so. But again, I don't expect that bill to pass. I personally wish it was, because I would be happy to give this program back to the state. I don't really view this as conservation work. It's just it's assigned to us in statute. We don't have much of a choice. The only choice we have would be to farm out the actual physical work to APHIS, but we still have to administer the paperwork. So at that point, you know, we might as well do it with our own staff. It's easier and take the money. That is all I have on a grant update. You know, really the next, I guess part of the reason I wanted to do that is just because I know, you know, we're due to have a new county board here in April. Wayne for sure won't be here next time. I just wanted to kind of provide a little update. The next time we look at dollars and cents will be July or August in the budget season and with the next terms committees.
Okay. Any other questions? No, thank you.
I don't have any cost share agreements for item number 11. If this is just the time of the year where that stuff doesn't exist yet. So moving on to my report. I think I'd already talked about the other easements for chapter 47. We do have one of the grants that we didn't talk about in the grant summary, is the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance Climate Smart Grant that we actually amended to last year's budget, but the Fox Wolf didn't get us the actual grant until December of last year, so we had no real choice to do any implementation of it yet. But that is that Climate Smart Grant for mostly no-till cover cropping type soft practices. Again, that'll be county-wide. If you recall, we've got about 450,000 in cost share and about 300,000 to implement a 3-year staffing position. So that's one of the things that I've got to do some thinking about here. I have considered contracting that to some degree. If we don't do that and we hire somebody, the grant as of the start of January here has 4.5 years on it. The staffing portion is only 3 years. So I'm thinking if we would end up hiring that position, I may actually wait till next year to do that. That would line up with the later years in the grant. One of the goals of that Climate Smart grant is to increase staffing capacity for agronomy in the Northeast Wisconsin counties. And I guess if we were to hire somebody and we want to keep them at the end of 3 years when we no longer have funding, it would line up a little bit better towards some retirements in our department if we drag our feet on that a little bit and make it happen in the second, third, and fourth year of the grant instead of the first, second, and third. But I'll continue to debate that in my mind for a little while here yet. I think we can start implementation of the cost share with current staff for a while. At what point we get so many contracts that we can't administer them, I'm not sure yet. We're maybe closer than I think, but we're not there yet, so. There were no runoff complaints, partly because there's been no runoff, right?
There's no frost. So
We have no snow, no frost, no rain, no nothing. So there's been no issues. Trying to think of the follow-up on the old issues, one of those last hard practice jobs in the Bear Lake was the IWORT NOD. IWORTs had implemented a tank for their discharge, their milk house discharge that was occurring daily. We're still working to finish that up a little bit with the electrical. They also did their fencing project where they had animals in intermittent waterways of the state. We now have those fenced out. But those areas that were fenced out will still need to be seeded down this spring. They didn't get the fencing done till late October last fall. So at that point, it's too late to grow anything.
I have one more question for Lisa that I forgot about it, but part of what you read or are listening on the news anyway, I'm not sure how it impacts you. With this budget down in Washington is the agricultural part of it. Where do you see that heading?
Well, we never know, because I get my information from the news as well when it comes to that. We've been, I shouldn't say we, but the national office has been preparing for a shutdown a few times during the year, this year. So I heard this morning there is a long-term budget proposal that the House and the Senate are gonna vote on. They have to vote on it by Friday, because that's when our funding runs out again. So yeah, it's just been, we just go to work and do what we can every day, and if they shut us down, then we have to deal with it. But yeah, it certainly creates a lot of uncertainty.
But there's nothing unusual in there for funding probably.
No, because we don't have a new farm bill yet. So once we have a new farm bill, things could change. But as of this moment, it's status quo for programs, policy, everything.
Timeline on the farm bill was later this year.
I mean, I hear they're working on it, but, the old one expired it didn't expire last year. They extended it. It was set to expire last year. But they've extended it until September 30th of 24, so. A lot of uncertainty.
Back to the tail end of my report here, we have obviously been doing a lot of work internally. Both the department head team and individually with the courthouse remodel. Our department, obviously, we work with John Francis and the Parks and Solid Waste. We'll still be paired up with them in the future courthouse remodel plans. So John and I have had a lot of meetings together with Jim Gersick from Dimension 4. We're waiting now, I think the end of this month, we'll finally get some more detailed floor plans. But the current floor plan has us in our current location, but also expanding into what is the break room across the hall to give us some much needed more room. We're short, one of the other components to this hiring the position that we have funding for with the Fox Wolf Climate Smart grant is I don't really have an office to put a person in right now. And that's obviously not going to get any better until this whole remodel project is done, which is 4 years up the road, but we'll end up having to build some kind of cubicle office in the middle of the room if we do that. So that's been kind of dominating the whole department head team work, and I think several of you are on the building committee.
I'll meet next Friday again.
Yeah.
This Friday.
This Friday. Fridays keep going.
So then upcoming later this week, obviously, is our conference in Green Bay, which a few of you are signed up
What's the
for.
quickest way there?
Every 10.
Maybe 10.
From your house, I guess,
Not from our
probably
house, though. For me, 54, right?
They're over to
54?
54.
Yeah, probably 54.
You guys must have picked me up at the house.
You guys are driving on your own, right?
No.
Everybody-
Three of us are going together, I
Okay.
think.
I mean, you're not coming here is my
No.
point.
No.
so.
Sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got to be there pretty early on Wednesday. Dan also has some commitments because he's on the committee that puts the conference on, so. And actually, staff-wise, we don't have as many people going as normal, partly because this week is spring break for Wapaka schools, so.
Yeah.
Stefan is off to Florida with his family and a few things like that are going on, so.
NRCS is having a supervisor meeting the day before, so we'll all be there as well.
On Thursday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. We have our meeting on Tuesday, staying overnight Tuesday, and then we're coming to the conference on Wednesday.
I thought that conference was kind of high.
Oh, yeah, the cost of having those spaces is terrible, so.
We're just gonna be there on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
But it's also a bit of a moneymaker for the association too. I mean, they
I know.
profit on that a little bit, but. You know, there's only a handful of conference venues that can handle our size crowd anymore. We're generally up in the mid 400 range for participation, so. Some of the older venues we used to be able to do years ago are off the board, and. I think the bigger venues understand that they can charge what they need to charge.
April coming up again?
Let's have a calendar here. First Monday is the first Easter.
What is it?
Easter's early.
Easter Sunday
I
is,
wonder if we shouldn't go to second,
well, that's what I'm,
because we're gonna have all new people. I think we better go to this.
well, we won't have new people yet. That'll. County
Elections on the second Tuesday,
elections on,
The second.
the second already, oh.
elections on the second, but county board won't be till the 16th and 17th.
I don't remember it. It's
Yeah.
changed much.
So this committee will still be intact as it is for April,
Okay.
whether we have it on the 1st or the 8th.
April 1st, remember, it's April 1st.
You know,
So,
I would prefer I'm gonna be coming back from Florida. I'd prefer the second myself.
it's fine.
Is that okay?
the second Monday.
Yeah,
The 8th,
is that okay?
fine by me.
By then my tomatoes should be up.
I gotta come to the.
No, we're gonna have it a week later.
You're gonna have a week later.
On the 8th, you gotta come in.
8th?
The 8th? No.
Well, you don't have to, but
Second week is the 8th, you said.
yes.
What's that?
Yeah, the 8th of April would be our next meeting.
But this, the election is,
Well,
the election
if you
is the
need me,
second.
Right, but
Fine.
we'll still be intact
Yeah.
yet on the 8th.
Right,
Yeah.
the formal changing doesn't happen
That's
until
right, they gotta be,
county
you're right.
boards, so.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Sorry
matter
about that.
what.
You gotta
you're
come.
Stuck again.
April 8th, right?
April 8th, 8 o'clock?
8
Yeah.
o'clock.
Okay. Order to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.